So I suppose we might as well take a look at some computers that I've gotten at least somewhat recently. The rightmost one here is probably the least interesting because I've done precisely nothing with it other than boot it up and make sure it works. However, this will sort of get its own video, as I'll discuss in a moment. As soon as I get a screwdriver, I can open this up. So this is an Inspiron, or Inspiron. I like to say Inspiron even though it's wrong, because as the legendary UXW Bill has said, the root word is inspire, so it only really makes sense to say Inspiron. But it is a Inspiron 537, and you might notice on the inside that it looks very much like the motherboard of an Inspiron 530, which, if you don't know, I have one over there. So my plan, which is what you'll be seeing in the video, is to do a motherboard swap, because this one can actually support quad-core processors. It does have 2 less RAM slots, but I've heard that the word around the block is that you can use 4GB DDR2 sticks in this, as in 4 GB, or, you know, 4 times 1, as in a single stick that's 4 GB. Jeez, I'm bad at explaining sometimes. The only real difference about this is quite possibly the specifics, such as the processor. This has a Pentium, I think, and mine came with a rather slow core duo. Power supply is different. The one in mine was, I believe, a Bestech, and that might have actually killed the last motherboard. And the CD drive I haven't looked at to see what model it is. Hard drive may well be the same, I don't know. It is based on a newer chipset, I think, which is, I don't know, I guess that's not really why the old one doesn't do quad core. It was a power delivery. It does not have a floppy connector, at least one that I can make out. It might be missing 2 SATA ports. Has same number and position of slots. Might have 1 less USB header. So basically it is a more stripped motherboard. However, it possesses all the features that I would need and is newer, and therefore at least accidentally allows me to use newer processors, which is something I definitely desire to do. Like I said, I don't think it's really worth bothering to boot this. I haven't done anything with it, so it would be kind of boring. It's just standard run-of-the-mill computer. It actually does come with 7. That one over there did come with Vista and is still running it. That one over there is like late 2009, so it's got to be just about the end of Vista machines, at least. Just generically coming with an operating system and not a specified one. Feel like this has 2 less front USB ports, which is probably the explanation for why there's 1 less header. And of course, the card reader, exactly the same one that I have in that computer over there, which I did swap out for a floppy disk drive. However, I still have the card reader, and since losing the floppy disk is inevitable, I will probably swap it back in. But yep, it's a DVD RW drive, so it's most probably the same drive that's in here. Looks to be the case. So that is the Inspiron 537. Or 537. It's morning, but it's still good as time as any for old computers, although calling this one old is kind of a slap in the face to actual old computers. I suppose I should probably try to find out an actual date code, and I'm sure there's one on here. But I'll take the cover off. Let's see here. There you go. If you can see that. It does look like the camera focused on it. It says 2013 November 20th. So it is kind of strange that this came with Windows 8.0, and that's what it's still running. Yeah, the case is made around the same time too. It's really a potato, but it is kind of nice to have because it consumes almost no power in the grand scheme of things. And you can see it says Windows 8 and has a AMD E1 1500. It might be 1.7 gigahertz. 500 gig hard drive. I don't remember the rotational speed. Has 6 gigabytes of DDR3 memory, which is actually kind of interesting. For a computer that's just garbage, you would more come to expect like 3, although I guess that's kind of pushing it for the time. Probably 4. And it does have a DVD Super Multi drive, so it can burn to everything. And those are probably standard-ish by the time. It has a card reader and integrated gigabit LAN. So it's kind of unclear what this computer was trying to be, but it still is a potato. So inside there is a 80 plus power supply. I don't particularly remember the rating. Let's see. Okay, so it's a 220 watt power supply manufactured by Lite-On, and it is at least somewhat efficient. And for expansion, we have a 16 link PCI Express slot, which does appear to be a full legitimate PCI Express slot, which I guess would make sense given that it's not an Intel motherboard. There's really no possibility of it being add to or something like that. It does have a single link slot too. Never seen a white one before. And then there's our lovely DDR3 memory combined with the very tiny and somewhat wobbly heatsink. Hopefully my camera can also be scanning Electron, but let's face it, probably not. There's 2 SATA ports, as you see, and then there's 2 more that have solder pads. And it looks like there's 2 USB headers that are occupied, which are not very visible on the camera shot. And then there's 2 more exposed. So, don't know what all you'd be doing with those. But moving on to the front, if I can happen to zoom the camera out, it's pretty standard. It's got a HDMI sticker for some reason. I mean, it does have HDMI, but I gave away the big secret. That's where the optical drive lives. But it has a reflective gateway logo and 2 USB ports. Card reader is kind of an overstatement. It's just an SD card slot, although it does claim compatibility with several formats. And it has separate, thankfully, headphone and microphone inputs and outputs, which I said that in the wrong order. But here's the eject button for the, oops, that's not even in the shot. This here is the eject button for the optical drive. It's rather far away from the optical drive itself. And then this is the power button, and it has a super bright hard drive light located just under here, which is not exactly super visible, but it's right there. I suppose we can boot this one up. Let me just throw the cover back on it. I did actually obtain a monitor with this computer. However, either it was already broken to begin with, or it broke on its way to me. But it looked like it would have been a nice monitor. It was, in fact, Gateway branded, although I'm sure Gateway didn't make it. I may actually go so far as to tear it apart, find out the model number for the display, and see if I can track down one for a feasible price on eBay. Because it did really seem to be a nice monitor. It had DVI, VGA, and sound inputs. So it must have had speakers somewhere. I did not get a mouse and keyboard with this, but I'm sure it came with a Gateway branded mouse and keyboard. I'm not quite sure if this power supply is of any particular format. It's definitely too small to be TFX. It might be SFX, but I'm not familiar with those power supplies, and I've only seen one in person, and that was multiple years ago. So we'll get the keyboard and mouse connections, and this does, thankfully, have PS2 connections. It is a step towards being a real computer. However, it does not have any other real computer technology, such as a floppy drive or IDE connections or serial or parallel, but PS2 is a start, and perhaps the most useful one in terms of everyday, because while I do often use floppies, it's not an everyday thing. I suppose I should also plug some speakers in, because what's a computer without some speakers? So I will show you just how ridiculous this power light is, if it'll just so happen to go on. Yeah, there you go. So we'll switch over to the... So let's see if we can get into BIOS here. BIOS setup, rather. And wow, that was not a good amount of glare. That was way too much. But there you go. Seemed for some reason that I'm not able to manipulate anything. It's a miracle that I got into BIOS then. Well, I tried again, and evidently the gods of computing decided that I was allowed to manipulate the BIOS setup this time. However, I apparently lost that privilege as soon as I started recording, so that's interesting. I suppose I can try connecting the keyboard via my PS2 to USB adapter. However, this is not a problem that I've ever had before, as I've most certainly booted this computer using this KVM directly. But that did seem to do the trick, so we'll leave it like that. And this doesn't appear, at least so far, to support any sort of legacy SATA modes, so you might be out of luck if you're trying to have a hassle-free Windows XP install. Then again, you should probably choose something better if you're trying to do a Windows XP system that's so new it's ridiculous. Oh yeah, okay, there, look at that, there's your setting. So it is actually a rather featureful BIOS, featureful if that's a word, for a OEM system, but I feel like that comes out of the fact that they probably just didn't customize the BIOS much at all, except apparently slapping their name on it. Secure boot is disabled, as it should be. I don't even know if UEFI is enabled on here. I guess it must be, because CSM is set to never. But we'll just go ahead and get out of here and boot into Windows. And wow, that's a lot of glare, and apparently my lens is dusty. It's almost amazing that the camera is so able to focus onto the dust. Yeah, there's that bright hard drive light again. And as I mentioned, this is running Windows 8. Okay, well, we've made it to the login screen, and as soon as I do log in, you will see that this is not, in effect, a standard Windows 8 system any longer. as you can see, or maybe not see because the glare is kind of bad, it is using the classic theme. And it thinks it's night? Never mind, it no longer thinks it's night. Yes, you do see that speed fan is here. I do believe that the answer was no, you can't control the fan speed, but here's another look at the classic theme. I use this program called W8 Classic, which basically breaks the, I guess it breaks DWM or something like that. And then you're forced into classic theme, and it has some blips. The wireless connection thing no longer functions. However, I don't really need that because I always use LAN on this computer, or Ethernet, I suppose is the better term. And it doesn't even have it doesn't even have wireless anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. And it did come with Power DVD. That is mostly what I use the system for, watching DVDs. In fact, if we're lucky, there might even be something in the drive still. And there's the necklace thing for my camera. And as you can see, there is not. And I suppose we'll take one quick look at the system properties. And if you remember, this is actually a lower score than what my Pentium 4 system got, so that does show you that this is kind of sad. Specifically the Pentium 4 system that ran Windows 8 and, had the 3.8 gigahertz processor and all that. So this is actually quite a bit slower than I had guessed. I thought it was going to be 1.5 gigahertz, or no, I said 1.7, and it is 1.5. So I wonder if that's what the 1500 declares, that it's 1500 megahertz. But it is 64-bit, and it has the OEM copy of Windows 8 for this machine, as it had the restore thing. I did not receive it restored, however, it was actually clear of personal documents, I believe. It was a while ago now. So that is a step. So I'll go ahead and shut this down, and I've got to go to my chemistry class, so we'll be back after that. If it ever does shut down. Oh yeah, that's right. For whatever reason, this thing doesn't like shutting down. It only likes hibernation, so I suppose we'll have to do that instead. So I will see you on the other side of my chemistry class, and for you guys that won't even be much of a noticeable delay at all. Well, I have returned, and here is the next computer that I thought I had actually covered, but I guess not, because I looked through my videos and discovered that I had never actually made one. I wouldn't say that I would give this its own video, at least not specifically about the computer, but it does have the original monitor. This is a Dimension 2350, I suppose I should say. It has a Celeron, a Williamette Celeron, and let's see, I guess I can move some of this stuff. As you can see, hopefully, I mean, it is kind of dark in here. In fact, I may need to get a light if we're going to see anything at all. There, you can kind of see stuff, but it's got a different processor fan. The heatsink is the same though, because the old one was very loud, and for whatever reason all the fans run at 100% all the time. And you can see my handiwork there of disabling the front panel not found thing by making it think that the front panel is there. Well, specifically the front panel USB thing there. I do actually have that part now. The person who gave me this computer wound up finding it. I just haven't gotten around to putting it in. Maybe I could do a video on that, I guess. And that is a GeForce FX, might be a 5200. I don't exactly recall, but it was put in the system by the previous owner. I do believe I have stuffed 2 gigabytes of RAM in here, and it's got a hard drive of some description. Go ahead and open up the okay, so it is just 1 gigabyte of RAM, but that is plenty for Windows 98. In fact, enough that you have to oh, that's nice, but enough that you have to use a special memory patch to be able to use it. So we got that lovely black bar on the screen, and it follows basically where I want to point the camera, so that's beautiful. But yes, it's an FX 5200 PCI, because this has no AGP. And the hard drive, if I can find it. Okay, so yeah, there's 2 hard drives, my mistake. I believe this 60 gigabyte drive is the original. And then there was also a 40 gigabyte drive that I received with a different computer but put in this one. So yes, this is the Dimension 2350. It dual boots Windows 98 and Linux. However, it did originally run Windows XP, and that is how I received it. It does have an optical drive. I believe it's a DVD burner, however it excels at doing not a whole lot because it's rather broken. I don't have the original mouse or keyboard for this. Hopefully I'll track down something that's similar, because this mouse and keyboard really should live with my Dimension 4700, because that's what it's from. I've been teasing it for literally months, so I figure I'll give you an update. The upgrading the Packard Bell video is coming. I don't have a date, but it'll get here when I get around to it. The next computer I want to take a look at is this Fujitsu computer. I'm definitely going to be doing a video on this. Let me just put the battery in. This is a Lifebook P1620p, or P1620, yeah, just, okay. And it's definitely going to be getting its own video, but I guess I'll do a quick tour of it. Currently has 512 megabytes of RAM and a 60 gigabyte 1.8 inch hard drive, and the RAM is a terrible micro DIMM. And it runs Windows XP Tablet PC Edition 2005. It does so okay, but if you want to run other things, it's not exactly ideal. And as you may have noted, this is definitely a tablet computer. And after a lot of trouble trying to calibrate the display, I did eventually get it to function as such. It seems that the screen is oddly reflective in some specific angles, but then not very reflective in others. But yes, it's actually kind of amazing how much brighter that looks on the camera screen than it does in person. Usually it's the other way around. But it works. It will definitely be getting its own video. And yes, the screen likes to move around, but there's buttons to change it. And of course it does have a keyboard, so it can be used as basically a netbook. Although it does, calling a netbook is kind of slapping it in the face, because at least for its day, it was almost like laptop specs. It can upgrade to 2 gigabytes of RAM. It does have a real Core 2 Duo processor. It's not an Atom or any Celeron or anything like that. So it is definitely capable of doing things, and I'm probably going to upgrade the RAM in it. And I just put an offer in for a 16 gigabyte SSD for one of these, which was a factory option. Um, and I will see if I get that offer accepted or wind up purchasing another one. But yes, that's basically the story with this one. I got this at a thrift store for a product of $7 perhaps. And I do believe I've mentioned this before because I did actually do a video on the stuff that I got that day. But I did not have it set up at that time. And it ran Windows 7, I think, which was pretty awful. So this is a Dell Optiplex GX270. While I'm not planning on its own discrete video, I will spend a fair bit of time going over this, as the previous footage that I have recorded has shown that this is not going to be short, sweet, or to the point, so why stop now? Yes, this floppy disk is original from when I bought it at the thrift store. It's actually a fairly rare occurrence for me to see computers at thrift stores, but this summer I've been doing quite well, I would say, as I've picked up 2 from thrift stores. That Fujitsu Lifebook, and then this thing. So, I guess I should have showed you the front, but I can do that later. The back, well, that's at kind of an awkward angle to look at. It has a standard array of ports, including parallel serial, PS2, VGA, 6 USB ports, I believe 100 megabit Ethernet, but I could be wrong, audio jacks, and then the video card, as this system does have AGP, and it did come with a AGP card in it. Oh boy, what was it? That's a good question. I do have it in this drawer over here if you would like to see it. Presuming I can identify which one it was. That's always a good question. No, it wasn't that. That's not AGP. Here it is. Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I remembered the model number. It's a MX440. And I think this one actually might say that it's an MX440 somewhere. But as you can see, it's DVI only, although it does have the analog pins, so a VGA adapter is easy to use. Yeah, I don't know. Let me see here. I don't know. I could have swore that said the model number directly on it somewhere, and perhaps one of the more eagle-eyed viewers will point it out to me. But it seems that either I'm not remembering it correctly, and that it actually doesn't have it, or I'm just blind. Whoops. Okay. So this is the graphics card that it has now. It is a GeForce 6200 of some description. I believe there are multiple editions. As you can see, it is passive cooled, which is what the MX440 was like. And it does have a modem of what limited use that might have. 4 PCI slots, and then your AGP 8X slot, which it seems to be heavily advertised that this is an 8X slot, so I'm not sure if that was a new thing at the time, or perhaps just the previous model of Dell just had a 4X slot. And this cooler, I've definitely seen before. I've seen a slightly shorter version on the desktop style Optiplexes, but it is a fairly standard looking heatsink. Although it's the first one I've seen like this on a full-size Optiplex. Has 2 IDE connections, and it came with, I believe, oh boy, It might have been a 40 gigabyte IDE drive. It was originally in this system as I bought it, which I don't believe I mentioned that this cost $10.39. And the hard drive that's in it now is SATA, which is kind of interesting for such an old computer. It's 500 gigabytes, which is kind of ridiculous, but it works. And there's your SATA ports. This is the Intel, it's gotta be 865 or 875. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not very good at taking the self bridge. At least I think that's what that is. And converting what it says into the chipset number. As you can see, the actual chipset is under that heatsink. Oh, it's probably 875 if I was guessing. But it's equally likely to be 865. And it does have a floppy drive, as you will see when we look at the front. A DVD something of some description. And no business audio, surprisingly. Oops. I'm throwing the camera all around today. But no business audio, surprisingly. Considering I don't use my Optiplex GX280 all that much, I may actually steal it from there. Presuming this has the pins for the audio, and yes, it does. I believe that's it right down there, those 4 pins. This SATA cable's in really rough shape, but it's the one that I put in, and so far it's working. Never really understood why these chassis intrusion switches are here. I mean, obviously for some kind of enterprise use, but I've never actually seen any chassis intrusion message anywhere in the BIOS or the power on self-test or anything like that. And there is... What is this? There's a connector down there. I'm not exactly sure what that would be for. It might be a debug connector for the chipset, or it could also be for a breakout serial port. I'm not entirely sure, though I'm sure the service manual for this computer would cover such a thing. I do believe that I have 2 gigabytes in this computer. That is 4 512 megabyte sticks. And it had 1 gigabyte as it was received to me. However, I do not know if that is original to the computer or not. I could be able to tell you based on the service tag. However, like many service tags, but thankfully not all of them, their information has mysteriously evaporated from Dell's website. This is the original CMOS battery, which is almost sort of surprising. Considering that this is, like, I would guess no later than a 2005 system. In fact, the motherboard says 2003, so I would say it would be safe to say that the computer was probably shipped in 2004 or somewhere around there. Let's see, there's usually date codes on stuff. Oops. Okay, there you go. The case was built on the 20th of May 2004, so I'd have to imagine that this computer was assembled and shipped not much later. The power supply is whatever it is. I believe it's 250 watts. You can probably see it better than I can. It is 250 watts. It's probably made by Delta or High Pro or something like that. The usual suspects. It does still have all of its spare mounting rail things, which is always nice. Upon closing the system... Oops. Oh yes, I forgot to mention. This does have 2 bloated capacitors. This one and this one. This one has started leaking a tiny bit. However, it does not seem to affect the function of the computer at all, so I'm not going to bother replacing them until it does. Or until they start leaking all over the motherboard or something interesting and probably regrettable. Okay, so this appears to just be a compact disc reader drive, which, that's interesting. I didn't even know at the time. Well, I didn't even know that these era of computers could be ordered with just a CD reader. I figured at the least you'd probably have to get a CD burner or just no drive, but apparently I'm not right. There is a floppy diskette drive. It's just a standard 1.44 megabyte drive. And of course, like all these cases, there's a fun flip up thing, and you find two USB ports, the service tag, and a headphone jack. And of course, your stickers saying designed for Microsoft Windows XP and a Pentium 4 sticker. I'm not sure what this came with originally. I think it's safe to assume that it was not hyper-threaded, so the sticker is correct, as hyper-threading was disabled in the BIOS, and the heatsink was up. The processor was obviously upgraded, though what it has now can be used with hyper-threading. I think it has now a 3 gigahertz Prescott processor. It's SECA 478. I might upgrade it to something else. I might not. I'm not exactly sure yet. But we will go ahead and plug this computer in. And once again, I apologize for the glare, but there's not too much I can do about it except film at night, and so far I've been busy with other stuff at night, so I've not filmed anything at night recently, and daytime is okay. I guess it's checking the memory or something. I guess it does that when it gets shut off and it doesn't know why. But yes, this is Windows XP. It's professional, and that is what the COA actually says. However, it did come with XP Professional, but like I believe I mentioned, it was not original. So I did wind up stealing the key from it and reinstalling with an OEM copy of Windows, and I actually did use the COA that's on the computer. I'm trying to get better with that, so I don't eventually... I'm sure that the lockout for my Windows XP retail account, since I've reinstalled stuff with that so many times, I'm sure that lockout is coming. So I'm trying to get better about delaying it. But this is Windows XP Professional Service Pack 3, and the OEM there should be a good indication that it's using an OEM key. And then here's some more information. We have the Pentium 4 at 3 gigahertz that I mentioned, and 2 gigabytes of RAM. And one thing I will say is that whoever donated this computer, as with the Fujitsu Lifebook, did actually do a reasonable job of clearing up documents on the computer, with one glaring exception. This floppy disk was in the drive, as I mentioned, and I didn't even notice it at first. However, that is not just dog pictures on there. There is indeed dog pictures, but there's also tax returns for the entire family. So I'm going to have to destroy the data that's on this, which I would anyway. Those dog pictures don't really interest me. But I always am sometimes, at least slightly, snoopy, but I never do anything malicious, and I don't even really look at the data. I just want to see if people are cleaning up their sensitive data or not. And I'm certainly not going to publicly shame anyone, even though I'm sure those tax returns have their names. I'm just going to delete it and wish them the best of luck. As for not doing it again and having someone actually malicious do something actually malicious with their data that they leave behind. And that is a fair warning to all of you that there are bad people in the world, so you should take very good care of your data, and definitely make sure to properly wipe your storage media before you discard them, or donate them, or even recycle them, because you never know what happens after it's taken for recycling. it may not actually be immediately recycled. So as you can probably make out, I'm being very daring, and I'm using the silver Windows XP theme. And this computer is actually reasonably powerful. It can run a few games that I would like to play, although I don't really play any games at all lately. Such as Bus Driver, it plays that more than well enough. There won't be any sound because I didn't bother to hook up speakers like a boss. Although I suppose that's a terribly dead meme, and, well, that's actually honestly my thing. Oh, how could I have possibly forgotten about this? I was just rambling about never ever seeing these chassis and screws and things, and then this computer does them like every 20 minutes. I don't know how I possibly forgot that. But, for example, we'll just start a route. Whee! As you can see, I believe everything is at maximum except the anti-aliasing, or I think it was anti-aliasing. Really doesn't like that turned on for some reason. That's just completely off. But you get the idea. The GeForce 6200 is not completely useless. It does run Google Earth pretty good, actually. And there's the hard drive and all of its 500-ish gigabytes. Surprised oh yeah, here it is. It's a Hitachi drive. It pulled out of an HP all-in-one, where the motherboard oh so likes to just kill itself. I'm gonna guess that it's probably solder pads breaking, as with a lot of stuff, and thermal cycling doing it. The place I work for has owned 3 of those HP all-in-ones. One of them died probably 2 or 3 years ago. And the next one died over the summer, I believe. Maybe spring, I don't know. Somewhere in there. And there is one that's still going, and so far it is continuing to work. I've told them that they probably want to prevent it from going to sleep. Quite possibly ever, because you want to reduce the amount of thermal cycling that it's doing, because apparently these motherboards that they contain are very, very sensitive to it. Now, that was a large tangent. I'm very good at digressing sometimes. However, if you ever talk to me in real life, unless we get to know each other very well, you'll probably notice that I do not say that much in real life. Although that's kind of implying that the internet these days is not real life, when it pretty much is. Especially considering I'm literally attending college online, which not only is safer during these specific times, but I do actually prefer taking online classes to in-person. At least so far, because I can do the work whenever I please, rather than having to go to a class at this time. Though I still have to attend the virtual lectures at specific times for some of the classes. But the work is very flexible, and I do appreciate that aspect of it. But that is the Optiplex GX270, and I am thinking that we have one more computer that we'll take a look at that I've acquired recently and not yet shared with you YouTubers. This is the final computer I want to talk about in this video. It's definitely going to be getting its own video at some point. It's just too interesting to not have its own video. It is a HP Compact NC4010, and as you can see, it does have a docking station. It's a Pentium M laptop. I believe I have 768 megabytes of RAM in it currently, and a hard drive of some description. It might be 160 gigabytes. And I do have a USB card over here in the card bus slot because the ports on the back are not exactly accessible at all times. It runs Windows XP Professional. It is actually using the original factory image, as is how it was received. However, the hard drive that was in it did seem to die, so I put a new hard drive in and tracked down a factory image, and a little while later had the factory image back on it. I'm not going to cover it too much because I do want to do a video on it and I don't want to talk about everything, but as you can see, there is a S-video connection on the laptop itself, and then there's an RCA down there. I'll go over the ports on the docking station there and talk about why not all of them work. And also on the laptop you have two USB ports, I believe gigabit Ethernet, which is actually kind of surprising, and then the modem connector. The chipset I believe is ATI, and the video is definitely ATI. It's IGP, yeah, that's it. I believe it's an IGP 350M video card, which may be combined with the chipset for all I know. But yes, that is the HP Compaq NC4010, and we'll definitely have a video. We as in just me. I work mostly alone on this. I'll be producing a video on it kind of soon. Over the course of this video, I've mentioned like 4 videos that I want to make, so you can tell I definitely have a full plate between those, and then college, and then whatever other bits of personal life that I have. I mean, there's not much, but there's stuff. It's about time for me to end this anyway, because my camera tells me that I have about 4 minutes of video remaining and space for 75 more pictures, so you can tell that I'm definitely getting my 16 gigabyte memory card filled up. But yes, thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you have one, and stay tuned and keep your eyes peeled and whatever for the videos that I mentioned, as they will be coming eventually, or if I do cancel one. However, I believe that to be unlikely. I will let you know in some future video or somewhere visible. But expect all of the videos that I mentioned. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.